My Gavanen Melonin, and well met indeed. I am Urukai Pikemen, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to the same as we conclude the faction overviews today with Isengard. It has been a very long time, but here we are. Quite literally the last one. Do note that the very first ones were recorded on version 4, but the difference between version 4 and 4.5 was only minor bug fixing, and so there's no difference really. And I only mention that because some people have asked for, please can you give us version 4.5 versions of the version 4 overviews, but they are one and the same. So anyway, let us dive in. Isengard, starting size. Well, you have the fantastic accolade of being one of the only few nations with only one region. Isengard itself, the Tower of Authan and the Ring of Isengard. Your starting army size is small, I am afraid. You have, I was going to call him Iron Man then. You have Saruman and a number of early tier Urukai raiders. In the fort to the south, you'll find first Captain Lurtz and a number of units as well. And then far to the west is Ugluk, ready to push into Enedwaith and claim the towns of Bregnas. Possibly Derwath and Gund as well, depending on what you fancy. But you've only got one region, and you have got a relatively good army to get going, though. Custom generals-wise, Ugluk and Lurtz are both Berserkers. Berserkers are a fantastic little unit, but they were slightly nerfed in version 4.5 in that they're no longer effective against horses. They get a bonus against monsters, but not against horses. So they lost a little bit of it, but being Berserkers is a fantastic. They're very, very good at the early tier, but they will drop off toward the end when Berserkers, the fact they have no armor and die to arrow fire becomes a bit of a problem. Saruman has quite possibly the best crossbow unit the game has, the Guard of the Hand. An absolutely fantastic unit, very powerful indeed, and very fitting of Saruman himself. Now, because that unit is entirely custom, as in it only appears in one location, Saruman sounds like Saruman on the battle map. When you click on him, he'll have Saruman quotes, which is good. Turning to family tree, then you don't have one because you are a Teutonic nation. So Saruman, of course, rules, and then the strongest orc will take his place if he were to die. So you can't really plan ahead. Lurtz starts as your heir, but as many of you will know, Teutonic family trees are a little bit broken, and the heir generally remains the heir for the entire game, and the candidate to take over as faction leader just jumps over the heir, and I don't know why Teutonic families do that. Again, it's definitely a bug from the base game that they just never bothered to test or fix. Victory conditions for Isengard are to hold 50 regions, domination indeed, including Isengard, Edoras and Karaz Galadon. You have to destroy Rohan and Lothlorien, so very centralised to the area that you are in. You need to take down, of course, Rohan, and then Lothlorien away to the north. In the west, you might have trouble from Enedwaith, but it's nothing that you can't handle as Isengard. The area that you're in, of course, Isengard is well protected by the mountains to the north and west and east. To be honest, the only direction in is up this small gap here, and you've got to cross the Isen River to get there. And the crossing is just there west of Foldberg. So Isengard is very well protected, which helps you a lot. The areas around you, Eisenrun, Derwath, Gund and Bregnas are the only rebel regions. You might be able to make it to Heret, but I doubt it, and you definitely won't be able to make it to Bile. Or whoever, someone will shout at me for pronouncing that wrong, but no, I don't know Gaelic, and hardly anybody does, so get off my back about it. The custom battle maps, of course, you've got Isengard, you've got the Hornburg, you've got Edoras, and from those locations you'll at least get some variety as you fight through what is otherwise just generic Northman towns. Neighbours and diplomacy, you are allied to Dunland, and that is the only diplomacy you have. So you're not yet at war with Rohan. They will almost certainly attack you very early doors, but you're not yet at war with them. So you've got about 5 or 10-ish possibly turns before they come for you, and it might be wise to prepare yourself to go for them instead. But they will attack you in time. Enedwaith is very much a halfway house, or a 50-50 rather. They might attack you, they might not. It is entirely unknown. They start neutral to everybody, so you could send out Grima, who you start with as a diplomat. Send him out west and get him to try and ally with them, possibly, if you want to secure that western side. I would argue against not doing that. I would argue against doing that, rather, because Isengard's a very easy campaign. There's no need to make it even easier. Economy and buildings. You are an orc nation, but orc nations were recently allowed to build everything. The only thing you can't get is the third tier of castle, so you don't get strongholds. You only get castle. But you do get all the town tiers. So economically speaking, there's nothing holding you back, really. The third tier of castle is so insanely rare that it doesn't matter that you don't get it, because barely anybody does anyway. It takes so long to grow castles, and it's something that's on the list that we'd like to change. Cities aren't in too bad a place. It takes a long time at the beginning, yes, but once you get to that sort of critical mass where your growth starts to really compound, it's actually very quick to upgrade at the top tiers. It's only at the beginning when it's very low, because of course growth is like 1%, and 1% of 100 is 1. But 1% of 1,000, you're starting to get into numbers that will actually start making a difference. So it's very easy to get the top tiers, but castles have absolutely no growth bonuses at all. They don't get farms, they don't get growth buildings, so it's very difficult to actually grow castles. And that's a problem. Well, you do get farms and you do get food production, and it's the only growth you get, but that is the only growth you get. Towns are inherently easier to grow, also because you can't change the tax rate in castles, so you just can't drop them down to higher growth, and that's something that we need to look into. But that's all a massive tangent. You don't get strongholds. You do get, interestingly, an advanced blacksmith. I wouldn't think that Isengard would. Oh no, indeed. I think Isengard, yes, you do. You get an advanced blacksmith from your own location. You're one of those rare nations who get an advanced armory from your own point of view, because Saruman has yet to apply his knowledge and power and wisdom to his army. You're at the point where he's starting to build his army, and so that's why Isengard gets an advanced armorer from the start, from Isengard itself. So you are able to build that straight away, although it has requirements, of course. You need to build a foundry first, so you've got to get up through the normal blacksmithing tiers, and you don't have any yet, so it's quite a way, but you can get it in Isengard straight away. Guild-wise, you only get the Fighter's Pit, Brawler's Hall, which gives you the Orc Fighters and Orc Hunters, and that's it. It provides you with a little bit of trash, because Isengard, one of the reasons why I think they're absolutely beloved, is because they don't really have any trash. Their starting units are quite good. So if you need something to do some dying for you, then the Brawler's Pit fills that role. And it's very easy to obtain the Brawler's Pit. You just need to conquer a few places, and then that guild will be offered to you. Also note that you do still get the wood cutting, which gives fantastic benefits, but does not bring the Ents. The Ents are not in version 4.5. No, I didn't think they are. No, because we did make them work. Yes, no, so Ents work, so if you go into the forest and fight them, they won't crash your game, but they don't spawn and attack Isengard. The Ent script is not in 4.5. It will be returned in version 5, but it's not in 4.5. So you can build that logging building without any fear. But do note that the woodcutting building in 4.5 is available in Isengard primarily. There we are, sawmill and lumberyard. Because the logging house is already built. No, I don't know where the logging house is, and to be honest, I CBA to look into it. It's a very minor building anyway. It gives a few economic bonuses, and that's it. Generally speaking, you're the same as every other orc nation. You get the same sorts of buildings as all the other orcs do. You don't do anything particularly fancy. You have standard barracks ranges and cavalry, so stables, barracks, ranges, so you don't have unique barracks or anything like that. And your diplomat comes out of Authan as well, so that's where you'll get your diplomat from, with a number of other units. Particularly a few Dunlending units come out of the Authan as well, the Pikemen and Beast Slayers, and then later on you also get Dunlending cavalry that trains from here. Oh no, you get them already. Are they not from the Authan, or have I just not moved the list down enough? I haven't moved the list down enough. Dunlending Horsemen, Clan Spearmen. So you get a few Dunlending units from the Authan, which is a bit of a change up. And the Authan also starts the game quite well prepared, as you can see. But things like this are going to be changed, and already have been. So, like, we're starting the game, so all of the lists are generating, all of the recruitment lists. It's as if every building in the game has just been built, basically. And you'll note that you can't get pikemen or beast slayers straight away, and I just think it's silly. So I've gone through the mod and I've taken all of those out, but it's not in version 4.5. But in the next version, you'll be able to train these units straight away, along with all the others. You don't get ships because you're Orc Nations. Orc Nations hate ships, but you do get mercenaries, of course, and we've already just touched on everything else. So all there is then is the gameplay. Isengard has, of course, one very popular and famous script, and that is the ring. For Isengard, if you find and capture the ring, you get an option to either keep it for Saruman and challenge Sauron for rule, or you can give it back to Sauron. If you give it back to Sauron, there are no other rewards. It's the same as the base ring script from Third Age Total War. We do hope to plan to change the ring script, but it's a very, very complicated script. And unfortunately, we just don't have that skill set yet. Scripting is well within our repertoire, and we're learning and learning and learning more and more and more and more. But the ring script at the moment, to change something so massive, will be a while away yet. So if you give it to Sauron, there's basically, just don't give it to Sauron. Why would you? Just hold on to it. It's better to just hold it. But to trigger the Isengard side of the ring script, you need to give it to Saruman. Now, of course, this means having less than 8 ancillaries. Ancillaries are these things. You must have less than 8. To get rid of them, you simply need to stand 2 generals on top of each other. Not all ancillaries can be passed between generals, but I imagine the Creebane of Dunland probably can. Let's check that Lurtz doesn't have 8. No, he doesn't. So we drag the Creebane of Dunland out, and we just drop it on his portrait, and then you get a little message telling you that First Captain Lurtz has gained it. And that is how you give ancillaries to other generals, and then he now has it. Of course, you can't change traits, but that doesn't matter. So Saruman has to have less than 8 ancillaries. The reason is, you can't have more than 8, so you can't give him the ring if he has 8 ancillaries. But once he has the ring, the script will trigger. It unlocks a unit called Nazca, who are very, very powerful and will be made even more powerful in the next version because I'm going to improve their bomb damage. I wonder if I can show them. I don't think I can. No, I don't know where Nazca actually even train from, but I don't think I'd be able to show them because they're script locked, and script locked units don't show in the browser. But anyway, you unlock the Nazca, but more importantly, the Nazgul come and join you. All of them do, from Dol Guldur and Mordor, with the last one being the Witch King himself. And then, something that I wasn't actually aware of, because the ring script was made a very long time ago, Sauron himself is actually just killed off if you hold the ring long enough, which I just did not know. It doesn't kill off Mordor, but Sauron dies, so his character just dies. He fades into nothing. It's as if Saruman masters the ring and Sauron is banished for that, which is a feature I must confess I did not know was there. The ring script was added way before I was team leader, and I didn't have any real say in what was going on in it. I was a lowly writer back then, and since then I've just never dabbled with it. So that was a feature I didn't know. So that's an interesting point, but that's the ring script in a nutshell. It also turns every nation in the world against you, good or evil, so you really do stand alone, but you get the Nazgul to help you. I've played as Isengard and taken the ring, and as that's the only script to talk about with Isengard, we can then just say, as ever, I can't give you a real difficulty rating for Isengard, and I'd recommend you post in the comments below and say how hard or easy you think it is. But having actually played Isengard, and recently, it is so easy. Rohan, unfortunately, cannot hold you back because cavalry is useless. Absolutely useless. Cavalry, of course, when controlled by you, is hellishly overpowered, but the AI just does not know how to use cavalry. For all of the different AIs that I've seen community members make, no one has ever been able to make the AI use cavalry properly. And so Rohan, who focus so much on cavalry, are easily beaten. Your army also outclasses them on foot, so you have that working in your favour as well. And once Rohan goes down, you have almost no other enemies that could cause jip. Rohan will fall, you then have a long period of time to build up your armies, and then you can easily wipe Lothlorien out of the way, because they just can't deal with 2 full stacks of Isengard forces. Taking the ring, though, of course, turns Mordor against you, so you do have to deal with them, and they will send quite a few stacks, but if you're able to do it relatively early, as I was, get the ring quite soon, then Gondor will still be alive, and even though Gondor will hate you, they of course will be fighting Mordor way more than they are fighting you. And you can just nip in and basically take the wind out of Mordor's sails, and that's the only threat, really. Isengard is a really easy campaign. But the ring script is very cool. You get to fight with Saruman, and he has a fantastic unit. That unit is such good fun. And it is a fun campaign to play, but don't expect it to be hard at all, I'm afraid. We have tried to give Rohan as much defensive capability as possible and boost their starting army size, but it just doesn't help. Unless we made it ridiculously in their favour, and you had to make sure every single battle you microed everything to the nth degree, we just can't make Rohan any good, unfortunately. You already only start with 1 region and 3 armies, and Rohan starts with all of Rohan and quite sizable garrisons, and yet you can still easily wipe them away. So that's Isengard on the campaign map, and now we're going to turn over and look at their roster on the battle map. Welcome then to Isengard's battle map, and the overview shows infantry-focused faction, but with a couple of additional choices, but obviously almost no cavalry. So your cavalry is, it comes in very early, so it helps at the beginning, but it'll easily lessen off and it is in the form of wargs and the Dunlending assistants. You do get trolls later on, but no real cavalry to speak of, to be honest. But we'll start with the infantry then. At the first tier, you've got a couple of units that are arguably some of the best looking in the mod, to be honest, in the entire roster. Urukai Raiders. Isengard has that wonderful trait of still having units that are almost all black in colour, but yet still have so much personality. Whereas Mordor's roster, just every single unit in my mind blends into one brown mesh. But anyway, we start with the Raiders, and this is, if you hadn't guessed, one of my favourite looking units for the roster. They are a sword and shield unit. 5 attack, 3 charge, 10 defense. So as your starting unit, you're already infinitely better than every other orc nation. You will outclass every other orc at the start of the game. The Raiders have 550 cost, which isn't too bad. That's quite... I mean, it's more than you would hope, but it's not the end of the world. Their average morale, impetuous morale response, and they are slightly slower than normal running speed. They are supported by Uruk Reavers, an early tier armor piercing unit, effective against armor, 6 attack, 5 charge, 7 defense. So very aggressive, but they lose out in the defense department in favour of that. They cost 625, so again, a slightly costly starting roster for Isengard. And also you get your only archer unit at this tier. Everything else is a crossbow. So Urukai archers have a 4 missile attack. As a first archer unit, that's actually really good. They are a really solid archer unit. Do not underestimate them. 3 melee attack with 7 defense though. They won't do very well in melee, even at the early tier, which is where they shine. But with the 4 missile damage, they will remain relevant for most, if not all, of the game. Don't forget that the best human archer units tend to have around 5 or 6 missile range, so the Uruks are only a short distance behind. Average morale, impetuous morale response, 2% lower, and again 500-ish in the recruitment. Supporting you are the warg units, as I say. So you do get 1 warg unit, warg marauders. The Dunlending cavalry will arguably be more useful than this unit. But the Warg Marauders at least are there. 11 total defense, 8 attack, 5 charge. They're very aggressive and they're very good on the charge, but I don't know why. I've said it before. Camels are just awful in this game. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about camels. Maybe they have a much bigger hitbox than they have any right to have. And that, to be honest, would be my guess. I think they have a bigger hitbox than you would actually even think. Because something about camels makes them die so much easier than horses. And if you're wondering why I'm talking about camels, it's because wargs, of course, are camels. They just happen to look like wargs. But in every other aspect, they are camels. And they just die so much easier than horses. I don't know what it is. They are really, really good at killing things, though. They have a fantastic attack and charge at this tier. They're really aggressive, and they will get kills, but if you leave them in battle, they'll die so much faster than horses will. So watch out for that. They're 5% faster than normal horse running speed, which gives them a bit of a boost. But because they're camels, they have a slightly slower running animation anyway. So that actually probably just levels them out. And then we come to tier 2, where the Authan sentries are actually a bit of a ho-hum about whether they're tier 2. But we'll start with the ones that definitely are, and you've got your Berserkers. Berserkers, of course, are a very iconic unit. They're a very good anti-infantry, shock infantry, effective against armor, and they frighten the enemy as well with an 11 attack and an 8 charge. That's fantastic. They're so aggressive, but they absolutely pay for that. Their total defense is 12, which is not bad, but note all of it is in defense skill. So for those of you with a knowledge of arrow fire, which you should have if you've watched this series, they die to arrow fire, no trouble. Even the lowly snagger archers who have 1 missile damage will kill Berserkers with no trouble, because Berserkers have no defense to arrow fire at all. They do, however, have 2 hit points, which is to try and reflect the fact that they're meant to sort of fight on with a bloodlust. But we just can't give them an armor stat. You can't really represent the bloodthirsty berserker-style nature of Berserkers in Medieval 2 because it doesn't have that kind of rampage feature that came in later Total War games, where a unit becomes almost unstoppable despite having poor stats because of the bloodlust. We just can't represent that. So the best we've got is 2 hit points, so that if they at least do die to simple arrow fire, they've got a second life to keep them going. They're relatively costly at 1,300, but their attack stats are fantastic. If you can get them into the enemy, particularly on a flank, they will just melt the enemy, no trouble. And the 12 defense stat is actually very good when they're in melee, so they're a fantastic shock infantry, but they are quite costly. But supporting them are the Aukman Spear Guard and Aukman Baingard. Aukman Baingard are your first proper anti-cavalry unit. In fact, they're the first only real anti-cavalry unit, bar the wargs, who do get, of course, bonuses against horses, because, say it with me, they are camels. Aukman Baingard, attack of 6, charge of 3, 18 total defense. They will hold the line well. And again, they've been revamped in the way they look over the years so that they have just a touch more polish to them, and they look... Their breastplate now looks like a real piece of armor. And I do quite like them. I also do like the fact that they're the one unit in your roster that really sort of stands out. It has its own theme. They aren't the sort of black and heavy-looking Uruks that come later and earlier that both share a similar sort of dark, heavy-looking theme. They've got their own design. But I can understand many of you will say, oh, they possibly look like the worst units in your roster, because every now and then there's an oddity about them, like this mask, for example, which doesn't have any visible way of staying on his head. And just little things like that. But anyway, they have a fantastic defense. They are 680 in gold coins, which is really cheap for what you get. So a very, very useful unit. Skilled against mounts, slightly slower running speed, average morale response again. Bonuses against all mounts. And they also have a brother, the Aukman Baingard, who are another armor-piercing unit. This is your third anti-armor unit so far. They're also good at hiding in woods, 8 attack, 4 charge, 14 defense. Now, of course, the Berserkers have better attack and charge, considerably so, but have much worse defense, don't have any armor, but both of which are effective against armor. So they're the kind of a play on one another. The Bain Guard are a more defensive version of Berserkers, whereas the Berserkers might do more damage. These guys might stay alive longer. And again, for about half the cost. I think the 1,300 cost there is definitely erroneous. I just can't see why they cost that much. Yes, their stats are very good, but to cost more than elite units, I just don't think is right. I think that must be an error. And if not, it certainly made me think we need to look at the roster, because this unit is really good, and costing only 680 is that... I think it's the Berserker that stands out as the one that's erroneous. But anyway, then we come to the Sentries, Authan Sentries. They used to be fantastic, but they've since been made much, much worse. And indeed, I probably should have put them at tier 1, because, again, I'm being fooled by my own nostalgia, remembering what they used to be. Their melee is 5, their missile is 6, and their defense is 9, so they're actually not very good crossbowmen at all. A 6 crossbow attack is really poor. They are effective against armor, but of course crossbows fire so slowly that they have to have a good attack, otherwise they are near useless. And that is what I would consider these to be. But then they are relatively good arrow fodder, like you're happy to let these guys die, and if you can get them behind the enemy, the crossbow always does nicely because it's AP. But a 6 missile attack is really poor. Good morale response. They only come from Isengard. 26 missiles, 150 range, and high accuracy. Quite cheap, sorry, at 620 as well, which isn't bad. But just not the best crossbowmen that you will face. Or you will field, indeed, as we'll see in just a moment. But then we come to the tier that you all want and you all know and love, the Urukai. The Urukai Infantry first, sword and shield, 9 attack, 5 charge, 24 defense. Pretty damned good for a mainstream elite tier unit. Good morale response, 2% slightly slower running speed, and they get a bonus against Rohan's cavalry, so the specific Rohirrim horse. You also get Urukai Pikemen. Oh, I didn't cover their cost. 850 as well, which is pretty good for the stats you're getting, actually. Oh, I'm on the wrong unit. 825 for the stats you're getting is fantastic. And then we come to the Pikes. Urukai Pikemen are fantastic pikemen. 17 defense, 5 attack with the animation that Pikes give. That's more like 15. Just a really solid unit. For 884, they're absolutely fantastic. If you can get these in your army, do, all the time. 2% slightly slower movement speed again. That 17 defense is what makes them stand out, because then they just really won't die. They've got a good animation, and then they're also supplemented in that with a high defensive stat, which is very handy. So a very good unit. One of your standout units, it has to be said. And of course, Urukai Crossbows. Urukai Crossbows are very, very good indeed, with an 8 missile attack, 5 melee, 17 defense, so they're not too bad if the enemy gets to them. In fact, they're pretty good if the enemy gets to them. But it is in their missile strength where you want to rely upon them. Good morale response. I also think Urukai Crossbowmen have the unique, or it's not unique, but there's 2 crossbow animations and one is faster than the other one. They were put into the game by the game's creators itself, Creative Assembly. And the Urukai Crossbows, I believe, use the faster animation, which makes them much, much better crossbows. So they pay for that in having slightly slower attack, a slightly lower attack. You may have seen some crossbow units with 10 or 12 missile damage. That's not uncommon. But having the 8 is because they fire much faster. It's a really, really, really good crossbow unit, and infinitely better than the sentries. Always swap out the sentries for the Urukai if you can. And then we come to your sort of rare and uber tier. So we'll start with the Authan Guard because they're more common. They are a solid shield unit. Very high defense of 28. That's really up there. 7 attack, 4 charge. They're not going to kill very much, but they will hold that line like nobody else. Very good morale response. No change to the speed. Bonuses against mounts as you expect. And again, they only come from Isengard. So them and the Authan sentries are the 2 Isengard defenders units. Yeah, very, very useful. 915 in cost. Again, I think the cost for Isengard could do with being looked at, because these stats in any other faction would cost 1,300 odd, but here they cost 915. And Isengard doesn't need to be made any easier. So I think that could be changed. Then we come to the Nazca. The Nazca, of course, are awarded to you when you take the ring. They have a few things about them that are fantastic. First of all, they throw fire bombs, which at the moment are actually rather weak, and we do intend to improve, because they can't even really kill Gondor militia with them, which just isn't right. And because there's only a low number of them, whilst them being fantastic in melee, there is still only a few of them, and so there's a few things we've done to make them stronger, but still, having 36 versus, say, 200 men will take a toll. You inspire your forces, they get bonuses against mounts, effective against armor, and they frighten the enemy. A 14 melee attack with a 12 charge, which is fantastic. They're really, really aggressive. 23 defense as well means they're not going to die when they run at the enemy, which is very, very handy. But what makes them really stand out is that they are relentless. They have a very special animation, which means they cannot be staggered. So even if surrounded by lots of enemies, they never do the stagger animation. Instead, they will always attack, no matter how many people are hitting them. But as I say, even though they have that ability, they can still be surrounded, and everybody that hits them is still doing damage to them. So they do have a tendency to die. But they do have 2 hit points. 60 meter range with the bombs, 3 bombs per man, and an average accuracy on those. They only come from Isengard or Barad-dûr, and you have to have taken the ring to get them. The fire of Authan there burns and knocks targets down. Excellent morale, and it's locked, and they have a 12% movement speed boost over any other infantry. But again, there's only 36 of them, so the fire bombs, I do want to boost up the fire bombs to make them a really, really deadly unit. By the time you get the Nazca, this is a point that I try and hammer home to the mod team a lot, and perhaps I am too zealous with it. But you get this unit at a point in the campaign where you have won the game anyway. So if you are going to carry on, it's just for fun. So it does not matter if this unit is ridiculously overpowered, because by the time you get it, the game has lost all difficulty anyway. It takes a while to get the rings, and it takes, by the point that you actually capture the ring and bring it back to Isengard, you will have killed Rohan, and you will be set up, and no one will be able to touch you anymore. So this unit is just for fun, and it is hellishly fun to use. It's a really good unit, and it is fantastic to field it on the battlefield. But there was pushback to making the bomb stronger, with a risk that the unit would become too OP, but it just doesn't matter. Divide and Conquer is not really set up for fantastic multiplayer balance. We don't give that a second thought, to be honest. And so if this unit is powerful for multiplayer battles, so be it. People will just ban it, that's fine. But in the campaign, I think it could definitely be stronger. The bombs barely kill anything, which is a real shame. They should be the most deadly thing about it. But anyway, rant about that over. Moving on to the trolls. These are just normal trolls, but if you upgrade them with armor, they get to look like these special Isengard trolls. I'm, to be honest, in 2 minds about having the trolls for Isengard, and I think having a sort of upgraded uber troll is much better served for Moria, who are much more of a troll-like nation. And I think in our plans to revamp Moria, something I would like to do is take away this visual upgrade from Isengard and create something for Moria instead. Because Isengard, again, just doesn't need this level of assistance. The Nazca come in really late, that's a different point. The trolls come in relatively early, and I just don't think Isengard needs them. There's also no real evidence at all that trolls live in Nan Kuranir, the valley that Isengard is in, or anywhere near Rohan or Dunland, so I do think it's a bit egregious that they're actually a feature in the roster. I don't mind Isengard being able to train trolls, but I think what I probably will do at a bare minimum is take trolls away from Isengard. So you'll be able to get trolls if you make it to Mordor or you make it to the Misty Mountains, but you won't get them from Isengard anymore. because I just don't think they need them. And you will almost certainly lose this visual upgrade in future, because I do feel like it's just a sort of tacked on to a roster that just doesn't need it. Isengard's roster is fantastic, and having these unique looking trolls I think is much better served for someone else. Moria. And then we come to your bodyguards. So let's deal with the guard of the hand first. This is Saruman's bodyguard. They are absolute monsters, and they look so good. That shield on their back, absolute dream. They are monstrous crossbowmen. They have the faster firing animation, and they have 12 missile attack, effective against armor you'd expect, frighten and inspire. Really solid unit. When they finish with their crossbows, they have an 8 armor piercing melee attack with 30 total defense. They're really, really good. There's not very many of them though. They're relentless, so they cannot be staggered. But do watch out that, again, same problem with the Nazca, there aren't very many of them, so they are a bit susceptible to being bogged down. But they're fantastic bodyguards for Saruman, and by making them ranged, they keep him at the back of the field, which is good, because that's where he should be. He would not be up there fighting at the front. He's not that kind of Maiar. Excellent morale, good morale response, 100% movement speed. 26 missiles, 160 on the range, and high accuracy. A really solid unit. And again, you cannot get generals in custom battle. We can't make that a feature. So many people say, oh, it sucks so much you can't get generals in custom battle. As if we've purposefully taken that decision not to do it. But no, it's nothing to do with us. They just don't spawn generals in custom battle. So Saruman's never here in custom battle is the point I'm making. But they will still sound like Saruman, because that's how voice files work. And lastly, your dedicated bodyguard, which is courtesy of Reforged, and we thank them greatly for it, having this fantastic looking helmet. I absolutely love the white helmet compared with the rest of the unit. It just makes them stand out, and it's a wonderful example of how one simple colour change can turn an otherwise drab and dreary unit like the Urukai. It turns them from this just solid wall of grey and brown into something that actually stands out with just a simple addition of a white helmet. And I think they look fantastic. Really good idea from Reforged, and I'm very grateful that they let us use them. So these are your dedicated bodyguards. They are just like Urukai Infantry, as you might expect. 9 attack, 5 charge, 23 defense. Urukai Infantry have 9, 5, 24, so they have 1 less defense than their counterparts. So they're just a smaller version of Infantry. That probably will be changed in future. I don't like the bodyguards to literally just be clones of another unit. They should at least be slightly stronger. They get the same bonuses and movement speeds as well. They are, at all intents and purposes at the moment, clones of one another. But for some bizarre reason, the bodyguard has 1 less defense skill, which just makes no sense. So they will probably be buffed in the future to make them just... They will be the same as Urukai Infantry, but just stronger. So it'll probably be 11, 7, 27 or something like that. Just a touch stronger. Take a speak English, take a breath. That is Isengard's roster. Now, I apologise if I've sounded a little unenthused today, but I haven't really found that I really could be bothered to do this video today, which is terribly poor form. Primarily because it is the last one, and I just kind of thought, ugh, we've only got one more to go. I do normally really enjoy these, but today I just didn't really fancy it. It's a lovely sunny day outside. I'm going to go and cut the grass and de-weed the garden. I had lots of other plans, and sitting at my computer was not one of them. So I apologise if I've been a little less than enthused. But Isengard as well is a really well-known faction. Most of you have played it. Most of you like it. I don't really need to go over Isengard, to be honest, so I wasn't too keen today. Now, I apologise for that. It shan't happen again. Now, in the foreseeable future, next week, there will be a developer diary covering whatever few small or minor changes have happened between now and then. And I may well talk you through, if the developer diary is not particularly long, I think I will also use it as an opportunity to discuss the planned changes for the Wildmen. Because, of course, the Wildmen are going to be overhauled quite substantially for the next version, along with Moria. And I may well talk about what plans we currently have in place for that. But until then, there'll be, of course, a Dolamoth episode this week, and then back to Ered Luin. I stupidly only did 2 Ered Luin episodes last week instead of 3. But I hope to do, there will be 3 in the next rotation for Ered Luin. And sometime soon I do hope to finish off the DCI Last Alliance campaign, but I would absolutely be lying if I said that my heart was in the DCI campaign anymore, because when you have so obviously won, as we did quite some time ago, my drive for games always goes when I know I've won, and that's the point that I always stop and play new factions unless something really exciting is happening. And at the moment in DCI, we've got 1 or 2 towns left to take, and we've defeated Rune's last army, and it's just it's administrative more than actual gameplay left. So I apologise for that, but I've been putting it off until I want to. I'm also getting much busier at work, so my free time is slipping away, I'm afraid. The effect of the lockdown in the UK is finally lifting. Well, the lockdown really lifted a while ago, but people are starting to properly go back to normal now, and my work is no different. We're getting much busier. Which just means I'm more tired when I come home in the evening. So that's what that does. I really like the look of the Minnesithil Guardian. It's one of the most polished units in the mod. It just looks so good. When you stand some units side by side, it's absolutely mind-blowing that they're in the same game. Like, the Minnesithil Guardian looks so crisp and clear and polished and just absolutely fantastic. And then you stand that next to something like, I don't know, Angren Raiders from Enid Wyeth, and you just think, how are these two units in the same game? One of them looks like it's from the 90s, and one of them looks like it's from the 2020s. And I just think it's amazing. But that unit, to me, just shows that this game has not lost it. And visually, this game is far from being past it. And also, I think at the moment, if I may just ramble about Dak for a while Dol Amroth smashes Isengard beneath us, as it should be, I think Divide and Conquer has a fantastic little spot in terms of popularity at the moment, because our nearest and dearest competitors, Reforged and DCI, Reforged unfortunately doesn't really have a proper campaign yet, and that is definitely letting it down, because there just aren't enough people to play multiplayer, I don't think. And DCI Last Alliance, I think, has suffered from the fact that actually most Lord of the Rings fans, for good or ill, are fans because of the films, and they have absolutely no idea what happened in the Second Age. And I think DCI will become much more popular after Amazon's series releases, and the mob, if I may be rude to you all for one moment, the mob will finally get a taste of what happened in the Second Age, and people will then start to actually really connect with it more, I think. But at the moment, not seeing their favourite characters and not really knowing what's going on, I think drops people away. And so I don't think DCI is as popular as it could be. I also think, of course, DCI... Dak has, if I may toot my own horn, Dak has now had something like 4 years of dedicated YouTube selling through my channel and through various other channels, whereas DCI is only just released, so it needs to get its name known a bit more. So anyway, so at the minute it's not really... it's not a sort of major threat to the popularity of Dak. But I saw that Rise of Mordor has released another sort of promo picture for some units in that mod, which is in the Attila engine. But unfortunately for them, they're waiting on some sort of tool that will allow them to edit the campaign map so that they can actually have a Middle-earth map. And I think, if I'm being frank, that is literally years away. And they don't have all of the nations set up yet. I think Rise of Mordor, if I'm being completely honest, knowing the way that mods go, Dak is a massive outlier. Most mods die off long before they achieve fruition, unless they really have a dedicated team. But if it's going to take you something like 8 to 10 years to get your mod out, imagine you right now, just stop and think where your life will be in 10 years, and then think, would you have been modding for all of those 10 years? Divide and Conquer had the benefit that it was pretty much completed by the time that Hummingbird and I came on, who are now the longest serving modders in the entire mod. So it's not like we've had to build the mod from scratch. It was pretty much there, and we just pushed it over the edge and got it released. And then for whatever reason, we've both just stuck at it as a hobby. Lots of modders just stop. Even in our own modding team, so many modders have come and gone while Hummingbird and I have been there. And I just fear that Rise of Mordor's ambitions outstrip its abilities, and I think it unfortunately will fall ever before it rises, which is a very cynical view, and I'm not casting any shade on them at all. It's just looking at the way mods go. I'd be surprised if Rise of Mordor lasts long enough to get to the point where a campaign can be made for it. So Dak, I think, has a bit of an edge. Third Age Total War, of course, is always popular as well. But I think Divide and Conquer is starting to get up there and challenge Third Age Total War, particularly with us including it as part of our download now. But anyway, I've rambled now for like 15 minutes. I apologise for that. Oh, look, there they are again. What an absolutely fantastic looking unit. The only unit I don't like in the Dol Amroth roster, to be honest, are the White Knights of Atheland. And they used to look so much better. They used to have a really good model. And unfortunately, the person whose model we used came to us and said, look, I just don't want you using that model at all. I don't want you using any of my models, in fact. And so we had to change them to this. And ever since then, I've always felt that they just... When you actually look at them closely, there's just something about them that doesn't click. The helmet has very, very, very few textures and clashes horribly with the kind of quite ornate armor that they wear. The shield is really cool, but again, it's like 3 different sets of armor have been bodged together, and I've just always felt that they look really naff, to be honest. Which again is no offense intended to anybody that's worked on them, and the reason they look naff is because the other units in the roster stand out as really unified. They just look really good. But anyway, I'm talking about Dol Amroth now, and we're supposed to be at Isengard. So that's going to conclude this episode, and indeed that is the last faction overview for version 4.5. The faction overviews will return with version 5 because I do enjoy doing these. It's only this one I didn't want to do because I want to get out there in the sun. But they will return for version 5. Lots of factions will have been changed by version 5, and there'll be lots to talk about. And of course, the barracks event will be removed in version 5. It already has been removed. We've already had fantastic testing results, and we're at a point now where the barracks event removal is done. There's nothing really else that needs to be changed now. And we're now moving on to the overhauls of the wild men to at least make them a touch more enjoyable to play as, and to not leave them as an abandoned set of factions, which they have been to date. But until we speak again, dear friends, thank you very much for watching these videos. I do hope you've enjoyed them. I mean, they are far and away the most popular videos on my channel, even now far outstripping the lore videos, which for a long time were very, very popular, but have dropped way off. And these videos have always been really popular. So the channel will probably take a bit of a dent now because not as many people watch the Let's Plays. And for good reason. I mean, I don't watch Let's Plays and I don't judge you if you don't. But I shall stop talking now and I will go and cut my grass. So thank you very much for watching, and until we speak again, we lost. Navar na den penamad melonin, and farewell.